And if
we're recording. Now it's recording. Yep.
Okay. If anybody has an objection or anything, no. Okay. Too late. So welcome. I hope you had a good week. I hope that you had also a good buddy call. And so we'll do a quick check-in and just to, keep it to 30 seconds to a minute and talk to us about, check-in and also how the buddy call went. So I'll just go around my screen and get the ball rolling. So looks like Claudia, could you start?
Hi, everybody. Really glad to be here. Anita and I just connected about a half hour ago. She's a busy lady. So we had just a quick check-in, and that was great. I was looking forward to meeting her, so that was fun. I'm doing great. I had an amazing empathy circle with my family, which I'm happy to share more about if that's up later. I guess it's not for the check-in.
Sure. Thanks. I would like to hear about that. Dean?
Hi. Yeah, I'm feeling good. It's like just got flustered by a techno glitch, but I got over the techno glitch. I managed to make it here in the end. I had two really good empathy buddy calls. I must admit, I talked for too long. They were very tolerant with me. I appreciate their tolerance and their love. And it was a wonderful thing to connect like that for so long with them. As you know, I've been doing their family circles already. My teenager is in charge of them. She's the one that invokes the circles. So we are at her whims and call, which is very empowering for her.
Great to hear. And Greg, I know you're kind of popping in. Do you want to do a check-in? And I don't know.
Maybe introduce yourself. We had one person that dropped out, so Greg is stepping in to sort of fill that spot. Thanks, Greg.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, I think I did the training in July, if I recall correctly. So it's been a while, and so I'm just filling in as Edwin said.
Great. Welcome. Good to have you, Lou.
I am very excited to be here this morning. So happy to see everyone's faces, and I look forward to this a lot. It's very nourishing for me. And I'm in a different location today. I'm down in Southern California because I'm visiting my son and my new grandson. So I'm looking forward to that later today.
Great. Rick.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I'm feeling pretty relaxed. I had two great empathy buddy calls. I really can't say enough. I mean, it was a gift to be able to connect with each of them and nourish me greatly. So thank you.
Sure. Great, Rick. Anita.
So I am thrilled to be back among you. I'm so happy that I'm on time. I did my homework, spoke to Claudia. I'm lining up my Empathy Circle homework. So I feel like better than last time when I joined the call.
Oh, good. Well, good thing. Otherwise, it would have gone on your permanent record. All right. Okay. Zainab.
I'm feeling quite good. I am not as sleepy as I expected, so that's really great. I did not manage to do either of my empathy calls from last week or this week. And I think some of that has to do with my fault and my computer's calendar. And I didn't, I think I might, yes, I didn't manage to do that. But I did have a call, a short empathy circle sort of set up with my family. And surprisingly, they were very well behaved. Usually they're very unruly. So that was very optimistic. And I think I'm going to do more of that. So I feel quite great coming into this call.
Great to have you here. Karen.
Hi all. Hi, nice to see you all again. Happy to be here as well. Had a really good empathy buddy call with someone who I'd met so many times. So it's finally great that we got a chance to meet Dean. Yeah, it was good. So we had a really good chat. Did an empathy circle with my family. As Zainab says, they were quite well behaved as well, surprisingly. Quite short because they were reluctant to do it, but they did, you know, they knew it was for me, so they cooperated quite nicely, so it was good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to today.
Great. Neil?
Good evening, good morning, good whatever time it is where you are. Yeah, I'm feeling good. Again, I was going to catch up with Zainab this week, but I think the 12-hour time difference between us just made it really hard for us to get any time in the diary. Not to mention I'm training to be a yoga teacher at the moment as well, so there's a lot going on. Everyone, do you think you might have taken on too much, maybe? But no, we're gonna catch up later on in the week, Zainab and I, and obviously looking forward to catching up with whoever. Haven't managed to run an empathy circle, but have talked about the concept at length with a very dear friend of mine who also is passionate about empathy, and she is really excited to see how we could potentially use the tool together in the future. So yeah, it's really good.
Oh, great! It's great to hear. Nila?
Hello, everyone. I haven't had buddy call in my empathy circle last 2 weeks, and I take a full responsibility for that, just because I think in the one instance, even the other person reached out to me, but the email actually went to my junk folder. So I think I need to do a better job in connecting with the person, the weekly buddy call. So I'll definitely do that.
Great to have you today. Edwin?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty excited just to see everyone on all these squares here. It just feels very warm and exciting, and everybody kind of working on the same project to learn. So pretty thrilled about that. And tomorrow we have another cohort starting for the US Australian time. We have like 21 people signed up for that. So really excited about the momentum we're getting here.
Great, thanks, Edwin. Anne?
Yeah, as regards homework, I failed with my buddy call. Rose contacted me and I didn't get back to her in time to sort something out. And then I fell asleep when I should have been speaking to her. So apologies for that. I've had a pretty hectic week. I enjoyed a call with my daughters the other day, and it wasn't a formal empathy circle, but it functioned differently to what it has done before, and I'm really pleased with that. There was a lot more listening taking place.
Oh, great.
And it's just lovely to be here with all these faces. Thank you for being here.
Great to have you, Anne. Rosa?
Hi, yes, it's good to be here. I've just started a new job yesterday, so it's quite overwhelming. And yes, been spending kind of 2 solid days basically doing online meetings. And actually I've got another one this evening in about an hour, so it means that I can only sadly do the first hour of this, and then I've got a meeting. So apologies for that. Yeah, hopefully Anne and I can have a buddy call this week at some point. And I haven't managed to do an empathy circle. I have suggested it to a couple of friends who are quite reluctant. But I think with further encouragement, they might be persuaded. So that's my mission for this week, is to try and persuade them that it's not a scary thing or intimidating thing, but actually could be quite lovely.
Great. So if you have to leave early, you might want to go first, or in your breakout room, mention that. And so that'd be great. All right, great to have you, Rosa. Ben?
Hello. I'm really glad to be here and looking forward to the next couple of hours. Feeling some apprehension and excitement about the process. Coming in with a little bit of frustration, some mixed feelings. I've been in a conference, being in a meeting, we're trying to organize a conference, postgraduate law conference on justice and ethnography. So I have some unresolved tension around that. Connected with Rick in a empathy call, very deep, playful, kind of joyful, vulnerable experience. Yeah, happy to be here. Ready to get started. Yeah, hi.
Great to have you. And Jamie?
Hi, I'm happy to be here. I too did not connect with my empathy buddy, but that Zainab, it was my fault. I'm struggling with my team, and yeah, kind of at my wit's end with that. And on the positive note, in my community, I suggested empathy circles, and there was some good reception to that. It's just getting everybody together. So thank you.
Great to have you, Jamie. Yeah, and so it's starting, we're gonna have like our first rain of the season. Big rain is coming up, so it's really windy now. We got a new puppy. His name is Diego, little pug puppy, but his other name is Jaws because he's constantly exploding. It's like you'd take your face off if he could. Interesting about that in pets. It's great to have everybody here. I'm really excited. It sounds like we're gonna have a great day. So now we're going to be going into the breakout circles. We'll be practicing the how-tos and then going into the facilitation, much like we did last week. Edwin, Lou, is there anything else you'd like to say?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I just want to make a comment of how heartened I am to hear how many people have either done empathy circles or talked to people about it. We're doing the preparatory work for you. It's very exciting to me to hear that you all are engaging in that way. That's all.
Yeah, and I just want to say, for those who weren't able to do it, I understand, I hear you. I suggested to my good friend of 30 years that we have a birthday party where the only present will be listening to each other. And he says, that sounds great, I'll send you a card. So there we go. All right. So
yeah, I'll just make a point about the challenge of getting people to take part. Again, it's like you can always say, this is an assignment I have. Would you help me out? And people say, oh yeah, I'll do it for you. They might not want to do it for themselves, but they'll do it because it's an assignment that you have to do. So that's a way to draw them in.
Yeah, that and large amounts of cash. All right. So without further ado, we'll go into the breakout rooms. See you there.
Do you want to talk about the challenge, dialing up the challenge?
Oh, right. I'm sorry. Yeah. So today we have a challenge. You can 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. And the facilitators will generally be doing the challenging with a little discretion there. So we'll be talking about some of the, some of the challenges that happen in an empathy circle. And they can be mild to, not mild.
Yeah, or none at all. If you don't feel comfortable having a challenge, you can say 0. And if you want to kind of a little bit of a challenge, just kind of say what you're, and there was a list. Did everybody see the list of challenges? Some of them, we'll talk about those more, but yeah, okay. All right,
great.
And our times,
our times is, well, we're going into the circles, and then we want to be out of the circles by 12 o'clock and have half an hour for debrief.
Okay. So opening
12 o'clock Pacific time. Sorry to be geocentric.
So we're talking about an hour and 40 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. So opening all the rooms. So my group will stay here in this room, and the others will be off in. Okay, great. So I know, Rosa, you have an hour to, how you have about 45 minutes,
less,
right?
A bit less than that. I need to leave probably at 10 to 5 to the hour, something like that.
Okay, well, let me set up the stopwatch here. Stopwatch. Forgot. So we'll do, each person will have 25 minutes to introduce how to do the empathy circle, and then to facilitate it, it'll be your topic, whatever topic you want. And then when the 25 minutes is up, I'll keep time for that. Then we'll have 5 minutes for sort of a group debrief, and then we'll go on to the next person, and then you can dial up your challenge level. Again, as we were saying, if you want no challenge, or if you want a little bit of a challenge, and anybody can, challenge to the facilitator. And we'll do 3-minute turns, and yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I just want to say I apologize to you. I have to leave early as well.
Oh.
At 12:15 Mountain Time.
How long is that from now? An hour?
An hour.
Okay. All right. Then I guess Rosa, since you have to leave the soonest, you're up first, and then Jamie next. So, and I'll keep the time, and then, yeah, so you introduce the empathy circle process, set the topic, set the time limit, which is going to be 3 minutes, and what challenge you want. So do you have a challenge level, 0 to 10?
I'll be brave. I'll go with 7.5, please.
Ooh, whoa.
I don't know what that is. Can I dial it down if it gets too much?
Yeah, it's up to you.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try. As long as I don't arrive to my next meeting crying, that's all right.
All right, go ahead. You go ahead, and you can start. I just
also,
started the time.
Okay, I haven't actually thought of a topic. So welcome to this empathy circle today. And I was thinking perhaps to start off, we've all kind of come from different places and different time zones. Maybe we can take 3 deep breaths to arrive in the space and to ground ourselves. So eyes open or closed, and 3 deep breaths. Oh, I always feel better after that. Forget to actively breathe. And then I was thinking whether we can each think of one word to describe how we're feeling today that we can share with the others. So what would my word be? My word is frazzled.
I'll go anticipatory.
Mm-hmm.
I think I'd say hurried. I have a very long day in front of me.
I'm just feeling sad today.
Good. Well, thank you all for coming today and giving up your precious time, and particularly when we're all feeling these different emotions and before we've arrived. So we're wanting to create a really nice, safe and welcoming space where we can share our experiences and talk and properly listen to each other. So I'm going to be facilitating today, which kind of just means that I'll be hopefully in charge of the timings and sort of making sure everyone has equal time to share and to be listened to. And if we're needing to, probably after the sharings, we can have a bit of a time for a break, so you can stretch your legs or have a tea, something like that. But for those of you, I'm guessing that this is new to you, doing empathy circles. So let's give a little bit of a background to what empathy circles are. It's really just a process where we practice empathizing to the best of our ability, and we're kind of doing this in a group with other people, and we might know each other, we might not, but it's a process of trying to be really present with each other and listen in a non-judgmental and open and kind of compassionate way with each other. And it's a practice of really deeply listening, and that's tricky. It's definitely a practice. It's something that there's this, I think I said this last time around, how empathy is a muscle, and that like a kind of physically growing the muscles in our legs, it's also it's a muscle that we can practice, and how to kind of become more empathetic in circles like that, and then take that into our wider life. So the actual process, there are 3 roles. There's the speaker, the active listener, and the silent listener. And we'll each take turns to each practice each of those roles, hopefully in quite a balanced way. And there's, of course, kind of potentially, if some topics that make you feel uncomfortable come up, something like that, there's the option to pass. If you really don't feel comfortable with that, that's fine. So with the speaker, the process kind of starts with the first speaker, and the speaker chooses someone that they want to listen to them. So that's the active listener. And depending on the topic, they just speak about whatever they're wanting to talk about. It's quite important as the speaker to ideally speak not too fast, and also to be taking pauses to allow the active listener to be reflecting in kind of shorter chunks. So you don't just talk for 10 minutes and they have to then remember all the things that you've said. This is a practice, and we want to make it as accessible as we can. And in a way, the speaker is kind of guiding the listener in how they're wanting to be listened to. So if they feel they haven't been reflected properly, or something's not quite right, they can then say that and say, no, actually what I meant was this. But ideally we're doing it in a way that we're quite gentle with each other. And towards the end of either when you feel fully heard at the end, or towards the end of your time, you can then say, I feel fully heard. So the role of the active listener is to be reflecting back what the speaker has said. And you can, again, as we said, it's a practice. You can be checking that you've understood, maybe saying, so what I'm hearing is blah, blah, blah. Is that correct? And then it's for you to have either be told that was correct, or to have some clarity around it. It's not a process of you expressing what you thought the speaker had said. You're reflecting. So you can use the speaker's own language as well, if that's helpful. And then the other role within that is the active listener, and it's still an important role. And they are going to be listening to the process. And if you want to, if it's helpful, you could always take notes. But it's also being focused on the call and not kind of, I don't know, looking around or going out for a cup of tea or anything like that. Potentially we can decide within the group, but sometimes it could be useful maybe for you to for the silent listener to turn their audio and video off, so it's not a big distraction. But we can discuss that as a group. So those things, and to see how everyone found that. So has anyone got any questions before we start?
No, not for me.
No. And to make it, sometimes it's quite useful for me to be the first listener, and then I can be kind of showing different, what we'll be doing as the listener if that's helpful. So is there anyone who would like to volunteer to be the role of the speaker to start off with?
I can do that.
Well, what were the time limits and the topic?
Oh yeah, time limits. So each person will have 3 minutes to speak. I'll be timing them, and if the time is passed, maybe I'll just kind of show my phone up to the screen with the timer, and that will give you a bit of an indication that the timer is gone. But of course, if you feel like there's a few you want to kind of summarize in a few more sentences, there's time to do a quick kind of finishing of your share. What was the other question? What have I forgotten?
Topic.
Oh, the topic. Oh God, I haven't even thought of a topic. Oh no.
It can be whatever's alive for people. That's always a good standby.
Yeah. How about see if how people are experiencing at the moment? How people's days or weeks are going? Yeah. How does that feel?
Works for me.
Okay, let me just set the timer. Okay.
Should we go?
Yeah, when you're ready.
Okay, all right. Yeah, thanks, Rosa. So I am in this very strange situation where I'm working right now on a lot of unpredictable tasks, and they come whenever they want, and they're all very urgent. So it's not like the ideal place to be in. And I'm sort of trained to do that. So in a way, I think people throw more of that at me. So I'm quite overwhelmed at work currently. I am just I'm just waiting, honestly, on mid-December, when all of this will come to an end, in a way that people will go back home and spend time with their families and forget about all the work that needs to be done. Because a lot of these tasks which are thrown at me, honestly, they're not really urgent, and they're not really, they don't need to be done, because by the time they're done, something else emerges. And a lot of this is COVID related. So yeah, I'm a bit overwhelmed with that.
Great, thank you. So what I hear is that you're feeling quite overwhelmed with your working situation at the moment, and there's an expectation that you're quite good at managing lots of different projects and different things at the same time, and so it sounds like people are piling on a lot of work onto you at the moment, and work that each thing seems to be very, or is perceived to be very urgent, but actually you feel maybe some of them are not as urgent as your colleagues think, and that you're just looking forward towards December, where hopefully you'll be able to have a bit of a break.
Absolutely. And I was discussing this with a colleague yesterday, and he said, why don't you just say no? And honestly, it had not occurred to me. So that was like a really good dawning. So I've been sort of training my brain to draw boundaries in terms of what I should and should not really pick up, and respond to that, like really really hear and listen to my own emotions so that I can respond to that.
Mm-hmm. So a colleague suggested to you about maybe setting some boundaries with some of these requests, and it's something you hadn't even thought about before, and so now you're kind of trialing or experimenting what it would be like to set these boundaries, and really kind of listening to how you're doing inside. Ooh. That That was very quick. So how you're doing inside and your emotions and your feelings around that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Rosa, for listening. I feel fully heard.
So I am the active listener and I will then become the speaker. So Jamie, would you listen to me, please?
I'm listening.
Set myself a timer. So yes, yeah, this week has been quite overwhelming as well, and I've started a new job which is kind of exciting and long anticipated, but I feel quite out of my depth. It's quite different. It's in a very different field to what I've been doing before. And
yeah, I really feel the same way too. I'm just been really totally overwhelmed, just like that too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Edwin. In terms of this process, as you're in your role at the moment, you and Zainab are the silent listeners. So what that means is that you kind of, during the process that you're observing, but you'll be waiting for your turn to speak when it comes, and you will have a chance to do that.
Oh, okay, sorry.
No, don't worry about it. We're learning. So yeah, just feeling a bit overwhelmed and in at the deep end.
So I hear that you've started a new role, which is exciting and also a bit overwhelming, and you feel maybe out of your depth in that it's different to what you've been doing previously. There may have been more, but I got sidetracked with the.
Don't worry. And that, yeah, it's interesting, even little things like I looked up a colleague who does my own role, but in a different region. And it was saying that, oh, he's got over 20 years experience in sustainable transport. And I thought, and we're doing the same role. And I'm newer to this. So that was a bit of a shock, but they all seem very friendly. It's just trying to manage my time, particularly working from home. It's a challenge.
So you did some research and saw that a friend of yours has the same role in a different area, but has 20 years experience. And so that made you kind of nervous. But everybody's being really nice. And so you're excited, you're feeling a bit like questioning yourself a little bit, and if you can do it, and since you're working from home, if you can stay on track.
And then I guess just to clarify that, it's the person who I looked up is a colleague, not a friend. So, oh, that's my timer. So I imagine with a friend, I could just talk about it, whereas with a colleague, it doesn't really feel appropriate that I can say, but you've got all this experience and we've got the same role.
So you clarified it's not a friend, it's a colleague. And so that dynamic is different, where you can't just ring them up.
Thank you, I feel fully heard. So I'm conscious, I realised we didn't, before we go on to the next sharing, we didn't talk as a group about whether the silent listeners have their videos and audios on or off, and what people feel as a group. Because I noticed for our two silent listeners just now, there was a bit of kind of, Zainab just had a big sneeze and Edwin was drinking a tea, which of course is fine, but it could potentially be a little bit distracting for the speaker and the listener. So what do you feel? Do you feel we continue to try with the videos on and see how it goes, or do you prefer them off? Does anyone have
Good with them on.
Okay.
So we're not supposed to drink or do anything while we're here?
No, you can, of course, kind of, but it's just trying to be, when with the active listener or the silent listener, to try to not be too distracting. If you're the speaker and during the breaks, of course, it's totally fine to have a drink. And if you're really thirsty as well, totally fine to have a drink. But we're just trying to create an environment that's conducive to really listening to each other and feeling comfortable to share. But we can decide how we want to operate as a group as well. So Jamie.
I just think normal, like, I don't need people to be like this.
Okay. So Jamie, you'll go on to be the speaker. So do you want to choose someone to
yes.
listen to you?
Edwin, will you listen to me?
Yep, listening.
Thank you. So what's present for me is just a lot. So I'm finishing my master's degree. Have been a lot of meetings with my advisor and refining my project and meetings and all of those things. And in the midst of that, my teen is struggling in school and with the COVID. I'll pause.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that you're working on your master's, and there's just a lot to work on there, and that you have a team that has some sort of a struggle related to COVID.
Yeah, my teenager, she's 16.
Oh, teenager. I thought it was team. Sorry, I was a teenager. Is you're having some struggle with your teenager?
Yeah, she's one of her friends had COVID. They shared a drink, and so she had to be quarantined. And she didn't end up getting anything. Her test came back negative, but she's very social and feels very trapped. And I don't understand it because I'm like, people can, stay away. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that your daughter had actually shared a drink with someone that had COVID, and she came back negative, but it sounds like there's a little bit of stress because you're more, be able to stay on with yourself, and she's very social and kind of wanting to go out, and yeah, so there's a bit of, sounds like some tension there.
Yeah, and it was also the anniversary of one of her friends who committed suicide, and so that also is just really, every time the anniversary of that, it's just really hard for her, and I understand that. That's horrible.
Yeah, I think I'm hearing some real concern for your daughter, just kind of what she's going through, and that, she has a friend that had committed suicide, and the anniversary of that is coming up, and, it's really hard for her. And I'm hearing maybe some concern on your part for how she's doing.
Yeah, and she's wanting to be rebellious, and so I have that tension of supporting her and caring for her, and then also not letting her just be a complete, skip school, not get work done, all of those things.
Yeah, so you want to support her, but also just, make sure she kind of doesn't, well, she's rebellious, she wants to skip school and kind of do all these sort of things, and you want to support her, but then also kind of keep her maybe on track, not kind of go do these things that maybe are maybe detrimental. So it sounds like you're struggling with how to manage that.
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, cool. Then I'll speak to Zainab.
Listening.
Yeah, I can feel the sadness and concern from Jamie, so I feel kind of some sadness, you know, she's kind of struggling with that. So some concern.
So what you're saying is that you're hearing Jamie and her sadness and had that concern, and that's concerning you as well, in terms of what she's feeling.
And what we're doing here with the empathy circles, I think it can be constructive for that. One is, you know, to have some empathy buddies to be able to talk about those, you know, challenges, sadness or concern. It's supportive, I think, to be heard as well as like with Dean, he does empathy circles with his daughter, and his daughter is like taking it over that she now calls for the empathy circles. So, and that just kind of helps with mutual listening. So I think what we're doing here is hopefully constructive and supportive, you know, for what she's going through.
And what you're sharing is that what we're currently doing here in the empathy circles perhaps could be a good fit for a constructive conversation of mutually listening. And you give an example of Dean, who's been trying it with his daughter, and he's had so much success that, you know, she's the one who's kind of like, you know, leading it and, you know, invoking them and bringing them together. And you wonder that perhaps this could also be a format that could be considered.
Yeah, and for me, that's very, I don't know, it just feels really good that, you know, kind of this work that we're doing is kind of spreading out people, and it's being constructive. It's being constructive, you know, it's sort of supporting people and having better relationships. So it just feels really good to hear those stories. Yeah.
And you're sharing that you feel pretty pleased that the work that you're doing is spreading and it's having its own wings, and people are using it for constructive reasons. And it's essentially, there's a lot of purpose and use to it.
Yeah. And yeah, so I feel fully heard. That's it. And I think we did the 25 minutes, so we want to do like a 5-minute debrief now. Just Rosa, if you want to say how was that, the facilitation, and then you can call on us to kind of give you feedback for about 5 minutes.
Yeah, I found it slightly, I guess, kind of felt more comfortable with it than last week, where I was a bit more nervous, and had felt like I'd got some good sort of tips from some other people last week about how to introduce what silent listener, and if someone is kind of being really kind of fidgety or really kind of visually slightly disruptive, whether how to manage that, because everyone has kind of different needs, movement needs and things like that, and so it's tricky to know how to address that without offending people or restricting people somehow. I think I forgot to, there's a few times I said the time was up, but I kind of forgot to wave my phone like I said I was going to. But yeah, it was all right. And it was interesting that kind of, Edwin, when you kind of came in with your slight disruptions, and my immediate response was like, oh no, it's an empathy circle. This kind of, because I guess that hasn't really been my experience so far. And so it felt like a bit of an affront. And so I had to quite quickly kind of check my own response to it and try to then have kind of empathy towards you rather than feeling irritated. Yeah, if anyone else has feedback.
Well, I'll start. That was about a 1 in terms of a challenge.
Yeah.
so when you're saying a 7, it was like, you know, that's like total mayhem. So that's pretty intense. In terms of the intro, I thought it was a nice grounding. You know, I felt kind of relaxed, like with the deep breathing, and then going around asking for one word. It really kind of helped sort of connect me to everyone too more. So I just found that very helpful. Starting a discussion, you got to be really careful about having a discussion outside of once the empathy circle starts. You said, oh, should we, you know, mute or not and have a discussion. It's like if you have kind of something like that, one thing you can do is when it's your turn, you can bring that up in your turn to stay within the process. I've never turned off video and stuff. So I just kind of give people more space to, if they want to drink or whatever, they don't have to be totally focused. So, but the problem with opening it up for discussion, you can end up with a 10-minute, 20-minute discussion outside of the process. And what we really want to do is practice, once we get into the process, try to stay within empathic listening and turn taking as much as possible. That's what comes to mind.
I could go next. Rosa, I've seen you do this last week, so I could clearly tell that you were way more comfortable and really in your skin compared to last time. And you had a very considered approach in terms of even going through it. Just like Edwin, I would agree that I think that entire breathing exercise and drawing people in was really great. Because only later I realized that at least Jamie and I are coming into this with a lot of different kind of energy, which was quite like was pulling us away from this. So I thought that was really great and really worked for me. So thank you for that. I think you have a really good tone as well. And the way, I don't know how you felt about how you responded to Edwin, but as someone who's an observer, it felt like very natural and you didn't feel even like remotely like perturbed by it. It was very smooth and it was just very open and very nice. So all in all, it was really good space, held together very well. Thanks.
Thank you.
Are you there, Jamie? Oh, not hearing you.
Sorry, I had a miscommunication with my team. Sorry, this is horrible. So we're just debriefing the last one.
Yeah, Rosa's facilitation.
And it's probably just because I'm feeling really hectic right now that it just felt discombobulated. So and I apologize for that.
Don't worry about it. It seems like you've got a lot going on in the background, and that's tricky to trying to be present alongside that. Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, I thought it was it's a lot of care kind of in your presentation. So I just imagine people who are just first starting out with, doing empathy circles, they would feel very invited, and yeah. So we're ready to move on to the next person. Jamie, are you up for doing it? Because you're needing to leave next, so.
Yes, I'm up to doing it. I apologize. My teen just left, and I had to hold her dog so he wouldn't run out the door. So now we're good.
Okay, take it away.
I need to leave in 5 minutes, so maybe I'll just stay around for 5 minutes, and then I might have to just back out quietly, and then I'll see you next week. Sorry.
No, thank you. Just do what you need to do. So welcome to Empathy Circles. I appreciate y'all being here today. And if this is your first time at an Empathy Circle, welcome. We always like to see new faces and have you experience this powerful mechanism that is the Empathy Circle. And how this will work is there'll be roles and they will rotate who does what roles. So we'll have a listener, active listener, and a speaker. So the speaker will speak to the active listener couple of phrases of either the topic or what's alive for them at the moment. And we'll pause, and then the active listener will repeat back what they've heard. And this is important for the active listener to not give judgment, to not try to respond. You're listening just to hear. You're not listening to respond, to critique, to have judgment. You're listening to take this in and help the person who's speaking feel heard. And so this will go on for the time that we're doing it today is 3 minutes, and listening, speaking. Then once the 3 minutes is up, if the person has felt fully heard, they'll say, I'll feel fully heard. Or when their next turn comes around, they can continue what they need to say. So once the listener, active listener, they'll be the next speaker, and then they will choose the next listener. And those of us that aren't in either of those roles will just be silent listeners. And it's important that our body language helps the person that's speaking feel comfortable, feel safe, and not distracted. Does anybody have any questions about these roles? Okay, great. So I found that if I'm the first listener, that helps model how this will look. And so does anybody have, so we're just talking today about what's alive for you. And so does anybody want to go first? That's no problem. I'm just going to randomly choose someone. Yes.
I think Rosa wants to go.
I need to leave because it's 5:02.
Oh.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Thank you for your
Congratulations on the new role. Enjoy. You'll be amazing.
See you next week.
See you next week. Bye.
Or I'll go then.
Okay.
If you're, and I'll speak to you.
I'm listening.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little concerned we're going to be losing 2 of the participants. It's going to be a little small group here. So I'm a little concerned about that. Yeah. But you got to do what you got to do. So.
Yeah, you're feeling some concern because I'm leaving. And so there'll be just
and
you.
Rosa too.
When Rosa just left. And then so it'll just be you and Zainab staring at each other. Awkwardly.
Well, I hope it's not just staring at each other. We might have like a profound connection here that everybody's going to miss.
I mean, you have the power. You can just randomly steal another person over here.
Yeah, so I was just saying it might be yeah, total profound experience here that everyone else is going to be missing.
Yeah, it'll be very profound.
Yeah, so that's kind of part of the organizing. So I've been doing the producer role, with the empathy circles, and it's really, bringing people together, connecting, scheduling. So it's a lot sort of to juggle, all these different, and then especially for tomorrow, we have one starting with 21 participants. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, so you're the producer, you're the behind the scenes, making sure everything goes well, organizing time, and then you have this new cohort starting, and so it's a lot.
Yeah, and I'm excited about we have train the trainers, which I hope both of you will, take this again, take it a couple of times and become a trainer, like take on the role of, Lou and Bill, so you can train others. So I'm really looking at, can we get a sort of a ball rolling where, everyone who's taking this training is learning how to facilitate as well as become a trainer, and then actually train other people so we can really sort of spread this practice. So all those wheels are turning in my head here, like, how do we do that? How do we engage people? So I really feel like there's this momentum kind of going. So I'm pretty excited about all that.
yeah, you're excited. There's a train the trainer happening, and you're hoping that Zainab and I do that. And so it's kind of like this ground floor. You know, once we do this, then we can be trained, and then, you know, we can train others, and then it just, the idea starts to spread.
Yeah, and you'll be training people to do training of others. So it's creating this. I'm excited about the empathy Ponzi scheme. It's like, it's an empathy, I don't know if you're, yeah, so it's an empathy Ponzi scheme. Yeah, I hear the beeper.
That's time. And so I love that, the empathy Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, I feel heard.
That's the best Ponzi. That was judgment, sorry. Hearing something. Okay, great. Zainab, will you listen to me?
Yes, please.
So Edwin had mentioned Dean's teen was doing facilitating empathy circles, and I did hear that when he said that, and I thought, oh, you know, like that would be a good thing. I had suggested doing an empathy circle with my family, and they resoundingly said no. So I'm going to hopefully keep pressing that idea.
So what I'm hearing is that when Dean in the check-in had mentioned that he's doing the empathy circles with his daughter, you were like, oh, that's interesting, you know, perhaps something that I could try as well. And you did actually float the idea with your family of possibly doing an empathy circle together. But it seems that they have turned you down unanimously, but you're still optimistic that, you know, it might have actually some ground. You just need to keep trying.
Yeah, I thought maybe Thanksgiving would be a good time to kind of, you know, we usually go around the table at Thanksgiving to say what we're thankful for. And so I think I could just kind of set some ground rules and just do a little mini and see if they like it, and then talk about, well, maybe we should do this more often.
So thinking of kind of going stealth mode, and you think like Thanksgiving is a great opportunity, you know, where you already have a sense of a structured dialogue where people actually say what they're thankful for, and you could lay down maybe 1 or 2 ground rules more and give people a feeling of what the empathy circle would feel like. And if they like it, then you could do more of it.
Yes, exactly. I like that stealth mode empathy circles. So that'll have to be a, yeah. But I am excited to connect with women in my community who are interested in building community. And I thought empathy circles would be a good way to kind of bridge some of the tensions that have happened with the recent election and just some other local issues that have been going on.
So you were saying that you like the idea of a stealth mode and a stealth mode empathy circle. And you also see the potential of actually using this for women in your community, especially in the light of the tensions that have sort of either emerged as part of the election or around the election, or even outside of that. And this could be a way to kind of bring people together and talk a little bit more around the community and work together.
Yes, I feel fully heard. I feel fully heard.
All right. Yes. Sorry, I'm just taking a moment.
Oh,
I got, I felt totally carried over by our conversation. Okay, Edwin, would you listen to me?
Yep, listening. So I was hearing that you're really carried over by the conversation. It sounded like you're really engaged in it. And yeah, it kind of made you like, oh, kind of lost track of, things.
Very much so. And actually that's, I'm realizing how much I miss having a community of my own, like in real life. And I moved to Fiji last year, and it's been, after COVID, it's been really hard to meet people or engage or do anything useful or meaningful from a community lens. So I miss that.
So you're just realizing that you really miss having a sense of community and having moved to Fiji, sounds like you haven't been able to create a community there, especially with COVID, so maybe impeding that.
Yeah, absolutely. And listening to Jamie, I just felt like, I felt really, it just feels really nice because very much sounds like, she's entrenched in the community and doing work that really matters. So I'm almost like part envious, but almost also a bit like inspired. So yeah, I feel quite good just listening to her.
Yeah, so you're just really enjoying listening to Jamie, and on one hand, maybe a little jealous of her community that she has, but then also on the other hand, feeling kind of inspired that she has that community.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, yeah, I miss that quite a bit. And I think the only thing that I've managed to build is at all some virtual communities. And I mean, and that's new to me. So in a way, it's a bit like I'm happy with some of the progress that I have done on that front. Otherwise, it would be very lonely being in the Pacific alone.
Yeah, so you do have some online community. It sounds like you're grateful for that because you realize that otherwise it'd just be really lonely if you didn't have that. Like you're out and kind of metaphorically, I mean, not metaphorically, literally in the middle of the Pacific by yourself. So
Absolutely, absolutely, and it's also a good recognition for me that I need that in my life. Like I'm not very good at being, like I would be a very bad hermit. So I think I need that grounding.
yeah, so it's really making you aware that you really need the grounding of community that so you really just have that awareness and realization. And then maybe it sounds like you want to take some steps towards that.
Very much, very much. And I think there's also a big piece of reflection that I need to do on that. So yeah.
Okay, I'll speak back to you then.
Mm-hmm. Yes, please.
Yeah, well, in terms of community, I hope you do more with our community here, do more of the trainings, become a trainer, facilitate empathy circles. My power is kind of acting up here, lights. So I hope you would do more with our community here and help build it.
Edwin, you're responding to what I was saying initially around like a need for community and saying that you were hoping that I participate more in the community that you're trying to build and these other sort of programs that you're planning to sort of put together, which is train the trainer and, the facilitation, and you hope to see me participate in that.
Yeah, and there's also holding like your own online or in-person empathy circles just for personal support, I think can be very helpful. Not even have a topic, but hey, let's just get together, share struggles we're having with kids or family or work or whatever, that it just can be just really supportive to be able to share that with others. So you can just set up your own empathy circle online, and invite others to create your own community.
And you're suggesting that there may be merit in actually setting up your own empathy circle sort of community, and you don't really need to speak about something specific. It could just be sort of more open-ended and bring people in and feel a sense of connection, even if it's virtual.
Yeah, and I started an empathy cafe on Fridays here, which is your Saturday, but it's on how do we bring empathy into the family, a culture of empathy into family. So it's kind of more specific strategies, so there is that issue of like family. My family was the same way. It's like I said, hey, let's do empathy circles. And it's like, no way, they're very conservative, Trump supporters, evangelical, sort of conservative. And so there was a lot of resistance to it. And, it takes a lot to sort of overcome that resistance.
And what I'm hearing is that you started the empathy cafes with an idea of actually discussing tips and tricks to get more, to talk more about empathy in your families. and experience more empathy in your families. And you yourself have been on a journey with this with your family, because often their values or beliefs or perspectives are not very aligned to yours, and you feel this could be a way to bridge or have a conversation around those.
Yeah, and we did get it started, you know, there was some breakthroughs for that. And then people appreciate it when they understand. They don't initially, it's sort of a shift, right? They don't understand. But once they understood and it's like, oh, we get heard, you know, it kind of supports constructive dialogue. Then they were fairly supportive of it.
So to summarize, what you're saying is that once people experience that a little bit, because you started them in some form and people did have a sense of what an empathy circle could do. And it was that shift that they experienced as well, of kind of like, oh, this is what is possible. And they saw the value in it that after doing that.
Yep, I feel fully heard. Yeah. Thanks.
Great,
All
thank
right,
you. So we can debrief, and if there's any feedback that anybody had for me as a facilitator, I greatly appreciate feedback. I feel like feedback is a gift, not a threat. So.
Well, how was it for you to start with for facilitating?
Well, I love it. I actually have felt my mood shift, you know, from when I started to now. I feel less sad, and I think it's just like you said, it's a gift of being heard and feeling that empathy of community.
Well, then I could go with the explanation. I thought it was just very clear, you know, the kind of the different roles. So there's sort of a crispness to it that seemed clear to me. We didn't do a challenge. We didn't dial up the challenge level. So it was like 0 challenge. I didn't know if you had would have liked some, but it is a little bit of a challenge just with 3 people. 4 people, I think, is better for sort of doing the circle. Yeah, I would have liked to have given some challenges, but yeah, that was.
Yeah, I should have asked for challenges. That's how I learn is by, oh.
There's next week. Yeah, that's it.
Oops. I thought it was really good. I thought it was really short to the point. I mean, just bringing people in, and then also sort of like, it wasn't like rigid either. Like it was just like, just enabling enough, which I thought was really good. And yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot of like, I think there was very, like, it was a bit, I mean, the sense I had was it felt a bit playful, like the conversation between 3 of us, like it felt like lighter. And I think maybe it had to do with your mood shift as well. I mean, which I can evidently tell, like from your face. And I think that also impacted. So I think that energy was just, I think, yeah, it was very nice, very easy conversation, and you held that very well. So thank you.
Thank you both. I appreciate it.
Okay, so we're ready to move on to you, Zainab.
Okay. All right. Jamie, are you going to be leaving in the next 45 minutes? Or would you need to leave between the time that I would be facilitating?
Yeah, I'm going to have to leave mid-facilitation.
Okay.
I'm just going to kind of try to leave as late as I can.
No worries, no worries. Just to get a better sense of like where we are, because it's 7:15 for me, so it's hard to understand the PST equivalent of it. All right, no worries. Welcome everyone. Today we're going to do a practice called the Empathy Circle, and it is a structured dialogue process. So what that means is that we will be doing the conversation will be timed, and we will all play different roles, and we'll do a little bit of turn taking so that each one of us has some time to talk and listen to each other. How this would go is that one person would be the speaker, and they will choose someone who would listen to them. and that they can speak for 3 minutes in this case, but it can be longer in some other case. That person speaks for 3 minutes. And then the listener actually relates back what they're listening, what they hear, in a way that the speaker feels fully heard. So the idea is this is no judgment, no response, just almost relaying back exactly what they're hearing. And it could be in the speaker's words or it could be in their words, but essentially something that captures the gist of what the speaker is saying. And once the speaker is done, they say, I'm fully heard. And then it's the listener's turn to become the speaker. And then the cycle carries forward. At every point, there will be someone who's not listening or not speaking, and we call them silent listeners. And their role really is to hear and listen into the conversation and wait till their turn comes up. So essentially, this is the process, what we follow through. There are a few things to consider. If you are the speaker, it would be good to speak a little slowly, perhaps take more pauses so that the listener can respond to you. As the listener, you can also ask the speaker to pause so that you can actually capture what they are saying. And as the silent listener, I think just have to hold space and help the listener and the speaker carry forward the process between them. And I think let's do a trial and we'll see what we learn, if that's okay. And for the sake of this conversation, we'll speak to whatever is alive most for us. So I'll start by modeling. Jamie, would you listen to me?
Just a question is, do you want any challenges or level 0 to 10?
I'm a bit scared.
You can say 0, it's up to you.
2.
2, okay.
Okay.
I'm listening.
Okay. I'm feeling very invigorated. And my feeling is when I came into the conversation was very hurried. So I just wanted to get through the day. But now after this conversation, I feel like I should enjoy the day, maybe have a good lunch. So I'm feeling good.
So you're feeling invigorated. You came in and were feeling kind of hurried and rushed. And so, but after being here, now you're thinking, and now I can enjoy the day and enjoy my lunch.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I should really take some time off for myself. And I don't really need to be in the rigmarole of what's happening right now in my life. So yeah, I mean, I think I've come out of this feeling way more empowered.
Yeah, so you're feeling like you can take time for yourself and that you don't have to be caught up in the rigmarole, and that you can be empowered.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to stop there. I feel fully heard.
Thank you. I feel your empowerment, and so I too feel good. And
yeah, I feel the empowerment too. I feel pretty empowered myself too. I think this is like the empowered group here.
I'm glad we're feeling I'm glad we're all feeling like that.
Transformational empathy circle.
Yeah, it's such a good feeling to have something positive to celebrate together. And I'm glad we could create that for each other. Jimmy, do you want to take your turn?
I'm going to have to leave, but I can't tell you both enough how I just my complete mood shift, and now I can go to my next meeting and it's in person, but at least I can bring some better energy to that. So thank you.
So I'm hearing you need to leave, but your mood is shifted. You're feeling more energy and you can take that to your next meeting. And I'm hearing some real gratitude as well.
Thank you. See you both later.
Okay.
Take care. Bye, Jimmy.
Okay, well, it's you and I. We can spend the rest of the time doing an empathy buddy call.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll speak to you. I guess there's no one else to speak to, huh? Let's see, what's on my mind? Yeah, it's difficult when two people leave. I wasn't expecting that. Didn't have a heads up that, so I'm just I made some notes here in the description, you know, for people sign up, really to make a point that people should really try to take, you know, stay for the full time, as well as, you know, attend all the meetings. So I understand when people can't, you know, things come up, there's sort of emergencies, but that's really to really make an emphasis on that.
What I'm hearing is that you're a bit thrown off by the sort of sudden notice of like people leaving. And usually when you plan this, you're very cognizant of like whether people can stay the entire time. And you even actually go out of your way to emphasize that. But you're also aware that, you know, things do come up and people do have to leave, but you just wish that you had a little bit of more notice so you could have planned a bit better.
Right. Yeah, I got notice from Rosa. I didn't know about Jamie, you know, that he didn't say anything in advance, but what I think in terms of the design is to make sort of a real, just make it explicit in the description of the training that's, you know, really to make an effort. Because if I had known that that both were going to leave early, I could have shifted the room, so it'd be, you know, they would have been in different rooms, so that would have not brought us down to just two people. So
yeah, I'm hearing that if we knew in advance a bit, you could have rearranged the rooms so that it wouldn't have been a situation where it was just two people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it could be really good because then just you and I can chat. So we got half an hour to actually have like 40 minutes to do an empathy buddy call here. So.
That's actually, to be honest, that's really good for me because I haven't managed to get one done. So just to break out of this, I have a question about that.
Okay, sure.
Do people usually do 20 minutes, or is it one person who speaks for 20 minutes? And because I've seen a few formats, some people said that it's 15 minutes each, and one person actually spoke for all 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm. The empathy, but it's whatever the agreement is I had set up 15 each person, but you can also do, like, you know, this work was based on the work of Carl Rogers, you know, and he did it in a therapeutic, and he would listen to one person for an hour, right? So he would use empathic listening just for 1 hour, but he wouldn't get heard himself. It would be just listening in the therapeutic. So maybe you could even reflect that back. Yeah.
So you were sharing that the empathy buddy calls are basically based on whatever people decide works for them. But knowing that this work was based on the work of Carl Rogers is useful, because in his work, he was using this for therapeutic reasons, where he would listen to someone for about an hour and not be heard himself.
Yeah, and it's like you were hearing, like Jamie was very sad, you know, and like I could just feel the heaviness, you know, I was wondering if what was going to happen with she was, but the energy shifted, and that's the whole point of the therapy, right? Is people bring in their issues, they get heard, and through the hearing, it kind of shifts their energy. So that's sort of the healing aspect of this empathic listening that we're doing. That we even saw it here, right? That people were sort of had a shift, and you were feeling frazzled, and sounds like you're feeling a bit more grounded. So that's one of the positive aspects.
And you're speaking to the therapeutic or healing capacity of empathic listening, where just extending that in a group, and we've seen it ourselves in the sort of last hour we spent together, where people's energies just shifted, and you yourself were a bit concerned where, you know, how Jamie's energy would unravel during the call. But like she's gone off, like, you know, the energy shifted, and I mean, and to speak to her case and mine, we're both feeling much better right now than we did when we came in.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm just thinking about what I want to speak about.
you're just kind of seeing what comes up. What did you want to speak about? Sitting, look, waiting, sounds like waiting for something to bubble up to the surface.
Very much. Just like waiting for something to emerge because I feel really, I mean, I can't tell you how good I feel. I feel really good at this point of time. And usually like, this is not how I feel. So just like, I'm very pleased with myself.
Yeah, you're just noticing your feelings that you feel really good and you're really pleased with, and like you don't always feel this way. So you're sort of just sitting with an awareness of that positive feeling.
Yes, very much so. And also like, I'm just thinking to myself that how much I have loved. We were with, last week I was with Rosa and Jamie and Anne, and how much I have loved the company of both of them and everything that they've had to say. And I feel so much more closer to them in spite of actually knowing not much about them. So I'm just really in this moment also a bit like thankful to have had their company because they both very much have that, they really lift you up.
So you're sharing some gratitude for having been with Anne and Jamie and Rosa previously, that they don't even know them well, but sort of the energy kind of lifted you up, and you're maybe just celebrating, grateful for that.
Yeah, and I think also, maybe it has to do with their own training. I mean, both of them have, I mean, Rosa's a counselor from what I understand, and Jamie does a lot of community and social work. I think it was also their training. They really, like, it was always, there were lots of, I always learned a lot about myself by just sharing this space with them.
So you're thinking part of it might be that they have sort of social work and therapeutic background, and that you're just noticing that you learn a lot and just by being with them. Maybe it has to do with their background too, that they're bringing something to this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking aloud because these are in my day-to-day work and where I work and the people I meet. This is not the kind of consideration, and not so much the format itself or meeting someone in a structured dialogue space, but even your micro interactions with people are not very considered. So I can see the huge departure from what I'm normally used to.
So you can really see the difference between this type of dialogue and the quality of it and the typical dialogue you're involved in work, maybe. Yeah, so you're just seeing the difference in the sort of the approach and energy and the feelings.
Yeah, and the quality of the conversation itself, or the like amount of space and yeah, I mean, consideration that you give someone. I mean, it's very transactional versus in this case, it feels very emergent. Like I'm not like, yeah, I'm not always quite sure what will come out of these, but I've attended a few now and it's always been like meandering, but very powerful.
Yeah, so you're noticing that the other type of dialogue is more transactional, and then this one here is sort of emergent. You don't know what you're going to say or what's going to come up, but there's a certain power to it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really, for me, it's a bit exciting also because I am studying anthro-complexity, which is basically working on complex development problems. So in a way, a lot of my worlds are colliding because a lot of anthro-complexity work talks exactly about this, about like, like how essentially that how human beings always knew how to raise children till management came into the picture. So how having an emergent conversation is more natural than having a transactional conversation.
So with the work that you do with complexity work, that there's something about the difference between sort of this type of I'm not quite sure, maybe the more transactional kind of a dialogue versus the emergent, that there's something natural about the emergence, like in terms of, how to raise children and so forth. There's an emergent natural capacity there, that versus more of a directed top, maybe business-like transactional approach.
Yeah, and I think there's a sense now of how that has been very disruptive, the management science perspective. And people need to sort of like, again, develop their skills on how to deal with sort of emergent issues. So in a way, yeah, like I feel like between that, my work and Empathy Circles practice, a lot of the worlds are colliding in a very beautiful, poetic way, which I did not expect.
Yeah, so you're really seeing how the different worlds are colliding, coming together, kind of in an unexpected way. So the world of emergent empathy circles and sort of your work, I guess, is what you're meaning.
Yes, very much so. Like, so there's one piece which is my work, which itself is like, I mean, I work in development and aid, but the other piece is also this entire complexity bit, because I got into it like sort of very much thinking it was more engineering, but it's turning out to be completely the opposite of that. And the underlying principles of a lot of that work is the kind of listening and space that we are holding and creating right now. So like, yeah, so just still quite amazed by how that's coming together.
Yeah, so a real feeling of amazement that the work that you got into, you thought was more engineering. And then, but if you look at underneath it, there's a real importance to listening, and that totally overlaps with what we're doing here. So it's a bit of a maze that you're finding those connections of how they fit together.
Yeah, and it's also the language. I think, I mean, the language that I'm using in different worlds. I mean, I'm saying the same thing, just the words are different, which is also, and yeah, and some of these words are universal, like empathy is universal, like in all the work that I'm doing. But some of the words also like have a lot of applicability in a kind of sideways kind of way. So yeah, I mean, it's also been a good, it's been a good sort of journey, just even experimenting with that kind of language. Let me pause here.
Yeah, so you're just looking at the language. It sounds like in the different communities have different language, and you're seeing sort of an overlap in the language between different communities. I don't know if
I mean, I realized that when I used this even with my family, I didn't actually use the word empathy circle at all, because like, I mean, my father particularly would have been like, before we do that, you explain to me the difference between empathy and sympathy, and it would have gone in a different direction. So I didn't use any of that. I just said, hey, let's try the structured dialogue process. And I thought that like worked in my favor, because he's the kind of guy who would just try and like unpack everything, because he has an engineering brain.
Yeah, so you did an empathy circle with your family, but you didn't use the word empathy because you know that was a word that might really sort of trigger a lot with your father. So you just said a structured dialogue process, and sounds like that was a way to sort of make it more accessible to your family, or your father especially.
Yeah, and I think I think it's just that. I think it's also about finding the balance. And like, I feel like my role in some sense here could also be that of a bridger, of taking this back into my workplace in a way that doesn't necessarily need to be like empathy circles, because I can't imagine anyone. So I work for the United Nations Development Program, and I cannot imagine them being there'll be one kind of people who will be, but the people who really need to show up, they are not going to be excited by the idea of doing empathy circles. They have to find a way to bring them in.
Yeah, so you want to get people involved in the process, but if you use the word empathy, there might be sort of resistance to that term. Some people might go for it, but others. So it sounds like you're trying to make it accessible to your work environment.
Very much, yes. I think I like that a lot, the word accessible, because yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. But yeah, that's really it. I feel fully heard.
Okay.
Thank you, Evan.
Good. Then let's see. Yeah, one thing I want to go back to just sharing about Carl Rogers, that his form of therapy was called non-directed. So he would listen, he didn't have a topic. He said, whatever you want to talk about, right? It's like, and I'll just listen. So through that listening, that people kind of have their own insights come to them, their own changes, you know, when they feel heard and understood, they make their own internal changes or shifts or problem solving. So it's not like a directed, like, I'm going to tell you what to do. It's, I'm going to create a listening space for you. I'm going to follow you on your journey. And you're kind of like solving the problems or addressing the issues on your own. It's sort of your own self-directed, like, I'm not going to direct you. Yeah.
So you were going back to Carl Rogers' way of therapy, which is non-directed, where he is not really looking to sit with you and solve your problems, but rather, provide the space for listening and almost be a container for it in a way that you can solve your own problems, and you can, you can have a recognition, a better recognition, a better understanding of what you're experiencing, and then figure out the best like steps forward for you.
Yeah, exactly. And with the empathy circle, we can give advice when it's my turn. I can give advice, you know, but then you reflect it back. So you kind of transform it through empathy. So it's like there's some advice, but you get empathized with. So it's not that hard club that sometimes advice is. You should do this, you know. It's like by reflecting it, you kind of transform it a bit. So it's not that hard, you know, domineering, how it can sometimes be sort of domineering.
And you're saying that the idea of that the empathy circle also has a component of advice, in the sense that when people have their turn, they can give advice.
Mm-hmm.
But just the fact that they're reflecting back, it's almost like a filter or some kind of like
Yeah.
a one step removed, some kind of consideration where you don't kind of like almost attack the person, you know, with your advice. And yeah, I mean, it just allows you to empathetically connect with someone before you offer them any set of shoulds.
Yeah, and then I'm thinking about your work. It sounds in development work and engineering, that the design community, you know, human-centered design, I don't know if you're familiar with that community, but, you know, it's sort of centered in the San Francisco Bay Area, at Stanford, at the design school, and with IDEO, which is, you know, a big design firm. So the founders of those of the company talk about empathy, you know, that empathy is sort of central to design, because if you design something, you have to know what the sort of the emotional feeling impact is of the products or services or processes that you're designing. So they start with, you know, empathy is foundational, you know, for any sort of engineering. I think that relates to what you were saying, that it's not just these mechanical things. You have to, under the surface, you have to design for people what's going to be an, how it's going to impact and how it's going to impact them.
Yeah, and you were speaking to the work of a lot of the work which is happening in San Francisco Bay Area with IDEO and a bunch of similar organizations where they see, and especially this is related to human-centered design, where they see a lot of empathy being the foundational element of the work that they're doing, and how there is a need to connect with the user rather than assume the needs of the user as you develop and design like processes, and how that might be relevant to the work that I'm currently doing.
Right.
Yeah. Did I miss anything?
No, that was it. There was a, excuse me. There's another piece that I'm thinking about is they have this term called field-dependent thinking that I read from an IDEO paper. And it's that, you know, it happens to me a lot. People give me advice. Like, you know, I'm doing this stuff, they give me advice, and it always irritates me because the advice is so superficial. It's like they tell me things I already thought of a long time ago, but it's not the problem that I'm dealing with, right? The real problem is down deeper than that. And instead of by giving me advice, by empathizing with me, if they would hear to the point where they really hear the real problem, you know, And that's what field dependent thinking is that you have a field of possibilities of the problem space, of whatever. And through empathy, you kind of start becoming aware of the full space, and I guess the depth and breadth of the problem space. And then you can really address a real problem instead of just throwing your own, superficial suggestions out there.
And you're sharing something that you read in one of the IDEO papers, which is field-dependent theory. And
Thinking.
Field-dependent thinking, thank you. And you were sharing how when people often give you lots of pieces of advice, which are clearly a bit irritating because you've thought of these things like ages ago, and they're not really understanding what the problem is at hand, or not even bothering to listen, or actually deeply investigate what is the real issue, but rather just throwing their versions of what could be done at you. And the reason the idea of field development thinking is interesting to you is because, and I'm paraphrasing, so I'm not sure I've understood it correctly, but essentially how there is a field of possibilities. Like if you actually look at something in context, then there's a field of different possibilities, and knowing those empowers you to sort of pick and choose in terms of what actually could possibly work, rather than coming up with almost like a hammer for every nail.
Right. And it's the empathy that creates that field of possibilities, because you see more deeply into that field. So when you empathize, feel your way into it, and hear your way into it, you're sort of expanding that field of possibility. So it's just an interesting concept, sort of relates because you talk about engineering, and David Kelly, who is one of the founders of IDEO and the design school at Stanford, he talks about saying that empathy is left out of engineering training. He felt he had some really great quotes about the importance of empathy training for engineers, because they really it's just not really integrate. It's not, it's something that's sort of missing. So
yeah, and you were saying that empathy is a way to actually broaden and understand that field of possibilities. It's really the way in. And you were particularly speaking to the work of David Kelly, who's the founder of IDEO and also founded, I think, the school at Stanford. And he, like the idea of, he basically speaks to how empathy has been left out of like engineering, and how that's a very crucial part, but one that hasn't been integrated.
Yeah, exactly. I feel fully heard.
I'm actually listening to you and also sort of like reflecting back into some of like my work. And I'm also, a lot of my current work, or where I'm trying to take my work, my current work is a bit more, it's more a kind of engineering style. But where I'm trying to take my work is actually talk a little bit about feelings as data. Because it's sort of like the similar mind process of how we need to acknowledge like what people are calling now as warm data. So this is all kind of like feelings data, perception data, which often gets ignored from even doing social assessments or economic assessments of rural, poor, vulnerable communities.
Yeah, so you're using the term feeling data. Usually that kind of, the feeling aspect gets left out. So you're connecting the term feeling with data is sort of a way of integrating it into your thinking and design project work. Excuse me.
Yes, absolutely. And like I'm also like, and just sort of going down that path has made me realize so much good work already exists of different people who've been trying to do this in some form or the other. And there's like so many variants of that feeling data, like there's thick data, there's rich data, there's warm data, like a lot of that stuff. And a lot of it is based in ethnography, which have a huge portion of empathy. Ethnography is, empathy is somehow is viewed as an output also of ethnography and also an input. So in a way, again, this is another another world colliding moment in my head.
Yeah, so this aspect of the feelings you see is important in your work, and you're just finding out that there's already been a lot done on this topic, and there's a lot of different terms, warm data, feeling data, just all kinds of terms out there, and it comes from the ethnography community. Actually has done a lot of work on this, and yeah.
Yeah, and it's and and I think it's also like sort of it's helping me demystify a lot of these as sort of separate. And sometimes the tendency is to think about these things in silos, including in your own life, where you're like, oh, I do the empathy circle as sort of a personal practice versus, I do like, this kind of thing at work. And I think just this demystification or just these sort of blurred boundaries is also like helping me integrate these different parts of myself.
Yeah, so you're really seeing, instead of these, like the empathy circle being over here, that your work over here, all these different silos, that this is sort of integrating and seeing how that they all really interrelate with each other. So there's an integrative quality there.
Yeah, and I think like that also opens up the possibilities of extending, things into each other, of actually bringing a little bit of like the other pieces of work into empathy circle, or actually doing an empathy circle with people at work talking about this, or yeah. So I mean, just like I think suddenly it starts like suddenly more things seem possible that which I hadn't thought of before.
So you're seeing sort of more possibilities emerge, like how could you use bits of the empathy circle in your work and your work in the empathy circle, and just different possibilities are sort of coming up.
Yeah, it's yeah, I think that's it. I feel pretty heard.
Yeah, so yeah, okay. Yeah, I wonder what kind of other ideas you have for the empathy circle, like what else could be done with the empathy circle. Is one question that comes to mind.
And well, I mean, do you want to talk about it, or do you want to continue the?
Well, yeah, we could just start talking if you want, or it's up to you.
I'd be happy to get some feedback as well. I mean, I didn't really do a full round, but if there's anything.
Some feedback. Yeah, well, you had a real challenge because you had people dropping out, so that's a real challenge. So you did pretty well. We kept the empathy going. Also, like Jamie, you're very kind of crisp and clear about your definition. The introduction. It's a bit more sort of. I mean, that's sort of my approach too. I try to keep it sort of succinct. To the point, explain it, and yeah. So that how was it for you, the facilitation? Oh, there was one other point, was you started off by being the first speaker. That usually you'd want to be the first listener, because the speaker, it's easy to speak. It's more modeling good listening that's kind of more important for the modeling part. So the problem would be is if the person you spoke to wasn't a good listener, then it'd be really difficult, to sort of model it. But if you're a good listener, you're the facilitator, you'd be the first listener, you're modeling good listening, and then others will sort of, imitate that. So that was the other thing that I thought of, yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's useful. Yeah, I don't know why I did that. That's actually quite useful. It was good for me. I was actually far more comfortable doing it last time. And I came actually also because I was like nervous. This time I wasn't nervous. So, but something else, maybe it's like something else in the brain. But I was, I think, yeah, it was still familiar faces. So it was quite nice and safe, and just, I think it was easier for me to do. And I had tried to kind of rehearse the steps in a way that I'm not confusing anyone. because it can get very confusing with the listener and the active listener and all of that. So I was trying not to do that. And I've watched enough videos with you do it. And in your case, you give really little instruction. Like you're really, you just kind of like go at it. And I think the rest of the stuff is learned while you're doing the rounds. So I was trying to go in that direction. But yeah, I mean, I take your point around modeling with the listening part. I think that's a good thing to sort of consider and be mindful of.
Yeah, the other thing I try to do is have people see the empathy, the how-to in advance, because that kind of goes through. Ideally, they've seen the 9-minute video and the 24-minute video. Then they've really gotten an intro, and then I really, in advance, I try to really make a point. Please see this video, but you know, a lot of times they don't, you know, watch it. So you have to kind of say it again. But it's surprising how little you can kind of get by with in terms of explanation. Because, you know, Rosa, she gave quite a long, you know, kind of explanation, but maybe different people need different, you know, explanation. You gotta have to kind of read the room, like how much people maybe need. Like I think hers would be good for people who are very timid, and you know, you really softly, gently bring them along. Whereas, you know, otherwise,
I think also knowing that she's a teacher, she teaches young kids. I mean, like, it just helps put in perspective. Because I mean, she has that way, and in a way, that's also very nice because it brings out like a child inside of you. So we noticed it last time when she was doing it. Like, suddenly we were all in a very different energy space. Like, how did that happen? But yeah, I totally hear what you're saying. And I think like I was trying to tailor mine in my head to people at work. If I need to work with them or work with folks like my parents who are engineers, it would just be easier to go chop, 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 and then let them have the experience of it and not even mention what this could do, and just try and get them to process. Because otherwise they'd fight it.
Right.
So,
Well, I'm surprised you were in the call with them. I tried to mix people up. So I was trying to get you to be in as many different people as possible. So somehow I have to check the formula of how I divide people up. I'm trying to have you be in as many groups with as many different people as possible. So.
Yeah, I was surprised as well that I ended up actually in a group with both of them. And I'm sure they were surprised as well. I'm like, what? But yeah, it worked out well, I guess.
Oh, I was muted. I need a different formula for how do you divide people? We have 4 groups, 4 people in each group. How do we, you know, sort them out so that they're in as, you know, mathematically, it's a mathematical formula, right? To get people in as many different groups as possible.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, if we ended up together, means someone else ended up together as well.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. But I mean, in a way also, I guess it's worked because it just builds a much safer space to try more. I mean, I can imagine Rosa going 7.5. It's like, oh, okay, these are known people. Fine.
Did you see the video? That was a video of a 9. That was a 9. So 7 is already pretty close to that. And, you know, that's like total mayhem, crazy, you know,
I was shocked, to be honest. I had never seen something like that. Like, it was just so much screaming and so much, like strong body language. And like, I mean, I'm not like, it didn't like, I mean, you also didn't get far. Like, I mean, it was just, I think the last 2 minutes where you can manage to understand a little bit of what people are saying. Before that, I was like, my gosh, what's happening?
We had to speak with the megaphone just to speak to the other person. And it was actually going well. The circle was going well. We only had one person that was trying to manage the crowd, and he got overwhelmed. And what I should have done is I should have had him become the facilitator, and then I managed the crowd, because I think I would have been able to manage the crowd better, because they were screaming and yelling. I could have kept, because as soon as we stopped the circle, there was a lot of media, there was a lot of newspaper and TV people there, and they started asking us questions. So then we got in. that's what kind of stopped it, was the, but it was, the actual circle itself was going okay. There was no challenge. It was all the screaming and yelling that was kind of, I'm going to take a quick bio break. Can I just,
No worries.
I'll be
Sounds
right back.
good.
Just take a minute.
Yeah, it's good. I'll also just go and do the same.
Right. Now just, how much time do we have here? What time is it? I'm going to send a message. Oh, 5-minute warning. Okay, so we got 5 minutes. One thing with sort of development, UN development, would be how to sort of spread the empathy circle process itself, because I think that would really help communities in general, just to get, it's a sort of a foundational skill that I think just this one simple skill of learning empathic listening, how to do an empathy circle, how to facilitate it, and how to train others, just that, to spread it as widely as possible, to get every person on the planet just to know how to do that. I think it would be a really good helpful first step, just for greater well-being. So that seems like the UN could get behind that.
I mean, honestly, I believe that fully, especially so one is at the ground level, which is really where we're working with people, but the other is also at the leadership level, where people are talking to each other and doing negotiations and all of that. But yeah, I mean, it's a lot of doing anything new in very bureaucratic set processes is always an uphill climb. So yeah,
Yeah.
right now also what I'm trying to do is a little bit of almost teasers, give people a flavor of different things. So yeah, I mean, I'm considering actually doing a brown bag or something like that for colleagues in the new year.
Well, the Joe Biden campaign, with the election, they made a big point about him supporting empathy. I don't know if you saw that, but on his acceptance speech, and he gave it at the Chase Center or something, and on the screen they had 2 big screens, and the first thing it said was, "The people have chosen empathy." I don't know if you saw those pictures, but so there's sort of this support, and what we've started is my congressman has agreed to take part in an empathy circle. So I want to start holding empathy circles with congressional representatives, sort of have a model and then spread it. So if we can get it into the government, I think it could sort of spread. And So kind of looking at those sort of type of strategies, and
Mm.
also doing it more social activist, so that we actually take the empathy tent, set it up in front of the White House and demand that Joe Biden take part in an empathy circle, or we set it in front of the Congress, the US Congress, and, you know, say we want Democrats and Republicans to have empathy circles with each other. So those are some of the things I'm thinking, and sort of to break through, because there is that resistance at the high level. And I think it takes a sort of a social activism to, you know, to bring it to the table, you know.
I think you might be right about that, in the sense that, like, I think, you know, there are like a bunch of different things you need to do to get something moving. And yeah, I mean, because even in the Pacific, like Jacinda Ardern has been talking a lot about empathy in her government and the way she sees New Zealand grow. And her leadership is really, I mean, well respected in the region, especially for Pacific governments. So we're seeing a very like small shift in the way people behave since she's been around. But honestly, I'm not very checked in on that. I should speak to a few colleagues to get a sense of what's happening on that front, because that might be like one very easy place to try something.
If we get her on board to take part in an empathy circle, because she's already, there's a lot of media, you know, talking about that she's very supportive. She has some interesting comments and quotes about it. Yeah. Well, thanks. We're glad we had the time to chat with each other.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody should be coming out. Everybody got 5 seconds.
Okay. Still waiting for a couple people, I think.
Did we lose Bill?
How could people not be coming back into the room?
Yeah, it's all closed.
So we are missing Bill. Bill's not the only person we're missing, though.
Oh, 2 people in our group. Rosa had to leave, and then Jamie, she had to go too. So.
Oh, okay. So we're really just waiting for Bill. So maybe something happened and he'll connect back in.
Yeah, he did mention he had some people coming, workers for
builders.
Oh, okay.
Builders, something.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and start the debrief then. Oh, there he is. Coming back in. Hey, Bill.
Hey.
Okay.
Must have hit the wrong button.
I've done that before. So, okay. So welcome back, everyone. Now's our debrief time. And the debrief question is, how was your experience facilitating? And how might it have changed your thoughts or feelings about facilitating? Okay. So I'll just, as for efficiency, I guess I'll call on people. So Ben, you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm sort of quite glad it's sort of coming in waves and coming in small chunks, also looking forward to more experience kind of facilitating in the full arc as well, kind of from the beginning and kind of through the process and closing Empathy Circle. I feel I feel pretty well equipped I feel well resourced to deal with kind of interruptions and disruptions. But I think that might be a little bit illusory, because I guess I really have no idea in the way that and in the different environments that empathy cycling is practiced, what sort of disruptions you might face. So I guess then I'm looking for, wondering, what sort of centeredness or kind of stability we would need as facilitators to kind of hold this space, and how much it kind of holds itself with people who are participating in it. Interested to find out.
Okay, thank you. Claudia.
You repeat the question?
Yeah, how was your experience facilitating, and what sort of impact did it have on you, on what you're thinking about your ability to facilitate circles?
Oh, well, I love facilitating circles, and I so appreciate everybody's positive, constructive feedback. So to continue feeling more comfortable with it, I'm actually interested in challenges and questions that came up from my other ones that I hope we have time to look at challenges and stuff. I'm ready to go.
Okay, thank you. Greg.
Yes. Well, I was a big weenie and I chickened out and I said I don't want any trouble. I think I said 0.5. And I was still surprised at how nervous I was the whole time. But I got good feedback. So I think, like Claudia, I'm interested in seeing some answers to hypotheticals that I haven't actually experienced, but I could imagine happening. So I'm looking forward to that.
Great, thank you, Greg. Karen?
I really, I really enjoyed the experience with my group. Anne, thank you for facilitating that. And it was very well structured. So we all had, the amount of time that we needed to go through it, and it was very well held, the space. I'm feeling more confident that I was a bit, one of the things that I'd said in my, in the challenge part of the document was whether I'd be able to handle it sensitively enough without being really process driven and kind of almost cold and clinical, dealing with objections, but still being kind of intuitive and sensitive. And I think I managed to do that. It sounded like from the feedback that even though I felt I was kind of like being a bit stilted, I don't think it came across that way. So I feel more confident. So yeah, so thank you, team. Thank you, team.
Thank you, Karen. Zainab.
I had a good time facilitating, but we didn't manage to close the facilitation process because two of our team members needed to leave. So then it was just me and Edwin doing a empathy buddy chat, which worked out well because I had harbored guilt about missing two of them. So that was really good. Just like Claudia, I had a sort of, I had in my empathy circle with my family, I had a bit of a tough time balancing my role as someone who knows them and can control them, and my role as a facilitator, and sort of walking in and out of that. So I'd love some, I mean, any ideas or any light that anyone can shine on this would be useful.
Thanks. I do have thoughts about that, but I'll wait till the end. Nilang.
Yeah, it was a really good experience participating into today's Empathy Circle, like facilitating Empathy Circle, because it was a kind of step up where Bill actually was throwing disruptions based on the label that a facilitator chooses. And I actually chose like moderate, middle level disruptions. And I felt that the best way to deal with disruptions, even within Empathy Circle, is directly to hold a person accountable. But what Bill said really stayed with me, and I think it will help me grow as a facilitator. He said that it's great to emphasize on the structure and the agreement that we have in Empathy Circle instead of directly holding the other person accountable. That might actually come as a little bit offensive. So I think that was a really good learning lesson. That was like a major learning lesson, but I have lots of others. So very grateful for today's experience.
Thank you. Rick.
Yeah, well, I feel lighter now. It was a challenging experience. It reminded me, I thought of how in the military, you know, they do like simulation, video game simulation. So it reminded me of that in a sense. And I felt like, I chose a 5, which was, I guess I felt like I wanted to just throw myself in there. And it was very challenging. And even afterwards, it was a little challenging still when it wasn't my turn to go. So I'm processing that and learning from it. And it makes me think like it's really important to, at least for me, to try to set the agreements even before the meeting happens. I guess that's where it puts my attention, like how to prepare people more fully even before the group connects.
Thanks, Rick.
That's where I'm at.
Neil?
Yeah, I'd agree with Rick on that comment. I think actually if you can gain some agreement up front, if nothing else, it gives you a space to go back to, because actually we all agreed to this up front, and you can kind of question that. Great practice. I think theory is brilliant, and I hear lots of people say, oh, role plays don't really work for me, and I think role plays don't work for people because they do put us on the spot, and sometimes that's what's needed. I think in that situation, it was very easy for me watching Rick, watching Dean, to be sat there as a passive listener and think, oh, you could try this, or oh, you could try that. Totally different when you're in the headlights, totally different. And I think that's a really good learning curve of this exercise, that actually when you're in that situation, when you're under pressure, when you are holding the space and you are faced with something that, and I had difficult ones, because I had very subtle ones which are even worse, I think, sometimes than the big behaviors. Because it's like, was that something? Did I just need to pick up on that? But because of that, just a brilliant exercise. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I'm ready for bed.
Thank you, Neil. Anita.
Sure, I agree that the experiential nature of the training is really fabulous. And what I have taken away from today's session is how much my headspace has to already be in the empathy circle, like at least 10 minutes, at least, if not like 20 minutes or 30 minutes prior to the call. Like I can't just come swooping in and then expect to facilitate. When I think about my own teaching in the classroom, like I typically come in early, and if students come in, there'll always be a few that want to have a chit chat or want to ask a question. And I have a social contract with my students that I really need my moment of Zen, I call it, just to like center. And I feel like this practice absolutely needs you as a facilitator to come in centered first.
Thanks, Anita. Dean.
Well, today I had a bad start, in so much as that I was flustered because my technology let me down. I have to agree with Anita, that half hour beforehand, and with a few other people saying that preparation beforehand really does make a difference, because if you can calm yourself before you actually go into the facilitation process, then you're a more capable facilitator. I'm feeling slightly guilty as being the cheeky monkey that was playing up on my 2 other roommates. I may have overdone it a bit. I apologize to them, but they did say 5s. And it's my fault, because I enabled the 5 by saying I'll have a 5 to start off with. So I apologize to you too. It's totally my responsibility for that. But I
We
come
said
away with
5, not 10, Dean.
Yeah, I know. I'm a cheeky monkey. I come away with the fact that it's really nice to see how other people say things, because I may have my own formula, but actually to keep coming through and hearing other people's formulas is always really enriching, because that then gives me more tools for my own practices. Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. Anne?
Yeah, it was great. Once again, it's just fascinating how many different ways you can introduce an empathy circle, and each one sort of covers it, but they're unique. And I love that. I love that about it. And there was a good amount of people really being them authentic selves, being really present, which was great. And we had fun, I think, with the challenges. We seem to up with that, getting a bit more. It was supposed to start with a 2 or 3, and then we went for a 4 with Claudia. So, but we had a nice quiet end circle, which was fairly a 0.5 level of challenge, which I think we enjoyed, having a normal kind of circle, so that we got our fix of empathy circling for a few moments at the end.
Thanks, Anne. Bill?
Yeah, I was really appreciative of my group. A lot of good skills and capacity there. Everyone is, welcoming, has sort of like a warm welcoming you into the empathy circle, welcoming me into the empathy circle. And I was struck by how much I'm learning as well, as I'm kind of looking at my facilitation training and trying to be transparent about the issues that I deal with and how I prioritize them. So I really appreciated my group and other groups that I've been in for just giving me feedback and then engaging me with on that, because that really helps me enhance my skills. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Edwin?
Yeah, something I just noted, some people mentioned it, is they brought a lot of different feelings. There was someone who was just dealing with a lot of sadness, almost grief. Someone else was, a couple people dealing with kind of work-related stress. So kind of those heavy feelings, and everyone commented that after being heard a few rounds, that just changed into very positive feelings. So that was just making a note of that. The other was, it's good. We really try to, if you can, attend all the sessions and stay the full time. We had 2 people that had to drop out. One person did kind of make an announcement about it, and the other didn't. So it was a little bit of a surprise. So if you do, things come up, that's understandable, but do make an announcement beforehand so we can sort of separate you into different groups. So just sort of but it was a challenge, right, for the facilitator. So the people to drop out. So it was a bit of a practice session too. So that was just some thoughts.
Thanks, Edwin. Yeah, and I am also just really appreciative of the 3 people in my group, Rick, Neil, and Dean, and the work that we did together, experimenting with different kinds of challenges during facilitation and learning about that. And like Bill, I also learned from recognizing what I do and unpacking it, which makes me more aware actually of what I'm doing. Because sometimes I do things and I'm not that aware of it, but when I have to explain it to others, then I become more aware of it. So I'm learning too, and that I'm grateful for that. Okay, so we have a few minutes left, and I wanted to, Zainab talked about using empathy circles with family and recognizing the difficulty that can happen when you're a member of a family, so you have the dynamics of the family going on, and you're also a member of the family bringing in a practice that kind of puts you in a special position, and what kind of effect that have. And the one piece that I would recommend for that is to give out the information about how the circle runs to everybody so that everyone has it, not just you. And that way everyone can participate in holding it and not just you. So you don't have special information. You have experience that they don't have, but everyone has the information and they can use that to try to, and to say that we're all here to hold the circle together. I've done this a bit, so I know a little more about it, but we're all here to do this together. That is one way to kind of lower the up-down dynamic. I don't know if others who have done things in circles with family have suggestions about that. I also, and then also, who was it? Claudia said she had a question about doing circles within a family that she wanted to bring to the thing. And so Dean, did you want to say something?
Just literally giving the role of facilitation to other members of the family really does make a difference, especially to the younger members, because it really empowers them. It's a reversal of the dynamics that they're, but you also have to make sure that they don't go power crazy during the circle process.
Yeah, I thought that was brilliant, Dean, when I heard you say that. Giving it to the, that's like a brilliant thing to do. Yeah, great idea. Claudia, did you want to ask your thing?
Mine weren't necessarily about family ones, but so one of the things in my family one, first of all, I knew everyone wouldn't participate and I wanted to do it. So I took those that volunteered and they were the ones, of course, that were most willing. My daughter does not like stuff like this. So she says, well, I'm going to come, but I don't want to talk. So I said, so I explained to her that it's always fine to not speak if, you know, when you're the speaker, that's fine. And then I was mulling it along for the week before. And I also know that if you don't pressure her, she comes through. So she actually did come through and she had the most profound things to say. So it was an incredibly deep conversation, very successful, and nobody questioned it. But I had other questions about, so one of my sisters is almost well, she's a conspiracy theory kind of person and never feels heard by the family. So I would like to construct a circle just for her. And I would love feedback on if anyone has ideas about that. And then the other thing I have that came up today that I'd like information about is, what do you do when you want to go to the bathroom? What's the appropriate way to be respectful to everyone? Because we used that as a challenge and we weren't quite sure what was best.
So my two responses to that are, so I think, you know, the structure of the circle makes it so that someone who is used to not being heard in the family would get heard. So whatever her things are would be reflected back. And if you wanted, you could just do an empathy buddy call with her where you're just reflecting back what she's saying. You could do that. But it probably would be, she'd probably enjoy actually being heard by everyone in the family, everyone being present to that. But I think there's also benefit to her reflecting back what others are saying. So this is the mutuality that's built into the circle that is also something that disrupts normal patterns of behavior in a group, which is that normally in a group, you know, some people are more extroverted and they talk more and they have more status of some kind, so they're listened to more or believed more. And the empathy circle practice breaks that down. And for that reason, it can be very beneficial for changing the dynamics in a group. And if you're facilitating in a group like that, you might have to, if people have difficulty holding to those, you might have to be rather firm in helping people do it. But I think it can be very beneficial. You know, I think it can really change some of those dynamics. And like what you were describing about your daughter, you know, it doesn't surprise me that in a normal family dynamic where, you know, she's used to having her things commented on or not believed or whatever, you know, she might say, well, I don't want to talk. But right, when she sees that something different is happening, then she might be willing to start talking and then what a wonderful thing for it to be heard and not questioned and not, treated like everyone else's. Edwin?
Yeah, from the feedback form, someone asked about the appropriateness of circles for dealing with the heat of anger, strong emotions, for example, post-election. So, what about using appropriate language, abusive, for example, no tolerance or abusive language. And so how do you, just address that?
Yeah, well, so the rules of the circle as we have them are that when you're the speaker, you can say whatever you want. And we focus more, so we don't focus on trying to control what people say. We more try to focus on hearing what people are trying to get across, what the meaning that they're trying to get across. And that generally works pretty well. We have had discussions. There's been a lot of discussion within the team about whether there are actually any limits to what it's okay for people to say in a circle. And we haven't, everyone has we have differences of opinion about that, or we have no set thing about that. I myself as a facilitator, I can imagine situations where I might ask someone to stop, or try to express themselves differently if I thought it was really creating a problem, or that I might end the circle if I thought that or I might ask someone to leave the circle if I thought that the circle was not capable, or I was not capable of hearing what they were saying or staying present with it. I might tell them, what you're bringing is too strong and I don't think we can hold it. So sorry, you'll need to find another circle or another time, or I might be willing to meet with them myself another time. I don't know. I do think one other thing that I would do as a facilitator is if I thought two people in my circle, there's a regular empathy circle, were trying to work out a conflict with each other. And that's not what the rest of the people were there for, that I might ask them to try to work that out at a different time. That this circle with all these people is not for working out your individual conflict. And so, yeah, but that's only if my experience was that it was really disrupting the rest of the circle, that other people were having trouble participating or trouble hearing what was going on. So that's my thinking. Edwin?
Okay. May I just add to that, there's the empathy circle, which can hold a lot of conflict, but then there's sort of what I'd call a restorative empathy circle that's sort of geared, more structured for conflict. And it would add like pre-circles with all the participants who might be in a conflict. So if there's, like half a dozen people in conflict or related to a conflict, I would just listen, like in an empathy buddy call, bring them in and listen to them individually for half an hour or an hour, just so they get a little bit of an empathy bath, along the way. So that's if the higher the conflict level, there's more tools that can be added, even though a lot can be done in the empathy circle itself. And then another point is, in terms of the family, is to start, what we do in my family is we get together and have just like how have things been for you since we saw each other last? What are, sort of positive things that have happened? So share positive stories to get familiar with the empathy circle process and the positive experience before opening it up to anything, which is going to bring up perhaps a lot of, conflict that's sort of been swept under the rug. So try to start with positive experiences.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, so I do have some background in conflict resolution, and one element of conflict resolution is mutual understanding, getting more understanding between people. And the empathy circle certainly supports that if people are listening to each other. But another part of conflict resolution is, so how do we mend the hurt that's happened, or how do we want to behave differently going forward? And you can certainly ask those questions in an empathy circle, but they wouldn't necessarily happen spontaneously. So actual conflict resolution requires a little bit more structure, the kinds of things Edwin is describing, than just a free form empathy circle, especially if it's a difficult conflict. If it's a minor conflict, then it might happen naturally in an empathy circle. But if it's a difficult conflict, it probably needs a little more structure. So we're almost out of time. Bill, is there anything you want to add?
No, I thought, what both you and Edwin said were, excellent. I just would say is that I've been into, in street actions, been people who don't share my political views, and that first time that you listen to them and you just reflect is really powerful. So that's an ally on your side.
That's my experience too. Okay, so we have another meeting next week, our 4th meeting. We will not be practicing introductions again, but we will be practicing facilitation again and have the opportunity to have challenges again if you would like that. We'll also be revisiting the culture of empathy, which we are trying to create, kind of the larger frame in which the empathy circle is a practice to create. So we'll just kind of be revisiting that larger framing, and do an empathy circle if you can between now and then, and do a buddy call if you can between now and then. Edwin, you had a finger up. Was there something?
Oh, it's just exactly just what you're saying. I'll send out a new list for empathy buddy calls. There's the feedback, the session feedback. It's great to post any questions there. Do an empathy circle if you can manage it. And there's that page of challenges. On page 4, you can go in and write in some of the challenges that you have had, that you've seen, or that you imagine. And for our check-in at the next call, we'll be sharing what is a challenge you've had, seen, or imagined, just so you kind of have a few things to say about that.
Bill.
Just quickly, Edwin has a cafe, an empathy cafe at 10 o'clock Pacific time, about the same time on Fridays. And so that's a good way to get in some practice. And then we also can co-facilitate. So if any of you want to attend something like that, you send us an email, hey, could you be here and co-facilitate, or not, or just you could facilitate a breakout room. But that's a good way to get some experience in a real situation. That's it.
Oh, and one more that's coming up, 11 a.m. On Saturdays. I'm doing planning a team to hold empathy circles with congressional representatives. My congressman in the district that Bill and I live in has agreed to do an empathy circle with Republicans. So we're doing team building for that, but we'll be doing, I'll give a little presentation, about the project, short slideshow, and then we'll do an empathy circle to practice. We want people who are working on that team to, do this training, get really familiar with empathy circles. So that's something else. And then to kind of reach out to your representatives, be it, in Canada or the UK or wherever you are, the US, that we can get something started where we kind of have this initiative to get politicians, high level politicians to take part in empathy circles. So that's also another project.
Okay, so we're past time. I know we want to respect that. Thank you everyone for your participation, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Twinkle fingers.